All right, guys, one more linebacker video before we end off here. We do our homework around here, guys. We do our homework, even the depth guys. We want to research into them. We want to figure out what's out there, and we want to be able to approach the offseason with as much education as possible. So, more depth guys, more guys who would just kind of buy time for you, guys who would either be very, very shaky starters or guys who would be quality depth, guys who could rotate in and play a little bit of a role. You guys get the picture. First guy, Zach Cunningham. This guy's been around for a while. This guy's been a very good player in this league. But last year, when he went to the Philadelphia Eagles, he kind of entered that phase of his career where he was just trying to latch on and grab a ring with a team that at the time was very hot, and then it fell apart. He's really not that old, though. He's only 29. He's not going to turn 30 until December. So he's not really old yet. I think he just genuinely saw an opportunity to grab a cheap ring, and then the opportunity fell apart. But the guy was a very good player for the Houston Texans. He had a season where he led the league in tackles. I understand that tackles are what they are in the modern NFL, but still, he was a very good player for Houston for a while there. Went to Tennessee for a little bit. Didn't seem to work out quite as well. And then he went to Philadelphia and was relatively productive, and PFF was relatively complimentary of him as well. You can go back to some previous years. You can see the Tennessee years tend to not be so great, but you go back to some of the Houston years, you do see some slightly better results. He's certainly a flawed player, even in his prime. He, even at the Combine, was running a 4.67, and he's undersized, so there are clear limitations, but he's managed to carve out a pretty decent career for himself. And I think that if you bring him on knowing that he's probably not this guy anymore, the guy from like 2019 or 2020, you can get good value out of him. He'll be a good piece off the bench, and he can also be quality, a quality like spot starter, spot player, somebody who rotates in and out, fills in for injuries. You could do a lot worse than Zach Cunningham. All right, next guy's in a similar boat, except he's much younger, and his fall from grace is, well, not much younger, but a little younger, and his fall from grace is much less explicable. It's Shaquille Leonard, formerly Darius Leonard. I don't know what the heck happened with Mr. Leonard here. He's only 28. He's going to turn 29 before the season starts, but this guy, this guy was on a Hall of Fame track. He was making all-pro teams. He was making Pro Bowls. He came out the gate hot. He looked like he was going to make the Hall of Fame one day. He led the league in tackles as a rookie. He had 15 sacks his first 3 years. It was all there for him. 5 interceptions in 2019, a monster. And then he got the big contract, and he still was playing good. He still made a All-Pro first team Pro Bowl in 2021. Still good. And then 2022, he barely played. And 2023, the Colts just kind of dumped him quietly, just kind of kicked him away. We're like, this is over. And he went to Philadelphia and played a little bit and wasn't able to turn that team around. And now he's a free agent. And what is there to say? It's like, this guy was one of the best players at his position not that long ago. He's not old. And something just went. And obviously the injury is easy to point to say, hey, that's why. But it's just kind of weird how quickly he became a complete afterthought. Look at how good these PFF grades are from earlier in his career. Even the PFF grades are like, yeah, this is a very, very good player. So I don't know what's happened, but you bring him on as a backup that you're kind of taking a low-risk flyer on. Like you're just saying, if we don't get much out of him, it's not that big a deal. He can be a workable backup, kind of like Devin Bush was for us last year. And if he does get forced out there, maybe, just maybe, he can rediscover his form from college. Or, well, not even college, his first few years in the pros. Excuse me. So, Shaq Leonard, at this point, probably just going to be a couple $1,000,000. He didn't do anything in Philly to earn much more than that. I can't imagine him getting more than like 1 year, $3 million. Kind of like Zach Cunningham, maybe even a little bit less than Zach Cunningham. So can't be too bad. Quan Alexander is a guy that seems to get floated with the Seahawks every offseason, and then it never happens. But Quan Alexander is somebody who just kind of bobs around these last few years as a fringe starter, fringe bench guy, kind of rotates in and out, starts occasionally, plays some, doesn't take on a full workload anymore. He gets hurt a ton. Injuries are a big problem with Mr. Alexander, but when he's out there, he can still play pretty decent football. His Pro Bowl days are long gone. There was a time when early on in Tampa Bay where it looked like he was a future stud, and it just never was allowed to manifest because of injuries. But you bring him in, you know you're not going to use him that much, and you hope that he stays healthy long enough to fill in for the inevitable injuries you're going to have at your linebacker spot. And you could do worse. PFF doesn't love him for sure, but for a guy you could probably get for just a couple $1,000,000, it's totally workable. So Quan Alexander, he got basically vet min last year. He might do that again. If you could get Quan Alexander for even 1 year, $1.5 million, you're definitely going to get your money's worth. You're going to get what you pay for. You might get more if he can stay healthy, honestly, but you're definitely at least going to get what you pay for, and you could do a lot worse than Quan Alexander at 30, for sure. Anthony Walker, interesting player here, was another guy who was kind of in no man's land in the offseason last year because he barely played for the Browns in 2022. I remember looking at him and being interested because he had been a prolific player for the Colts and in 2021 with the Browns. But 2023, he kind of bounced back. He played in 12 games, so he played most of the season, but he didn't play a huge role on the Browns. But he did play a role for sure. He played 450 plus snaps. He played in 12 games, started 12 games, and while the numbers aren't huge, they definitely match the pay. And it has to be remembered, he was part of an elite Cleveland defense, so he's doing something right out there. He's going to turn 29 before the season starts. Age is not that big of a deal. The PFF grade for last year was pretty good. The very small sample size of 2022 was also very good. He's always kind of been graded out these last few years well. You have to go back a few years to find the grades that aren't so good. And if you could get Anthony Walker Jr. for, let's say he gets a little bit of a bump because he was relatively healthy in 2023. Let's say he gets like $3 million. 1 year, $3 million for Anthony Walker to be a quality depth piece for you. You could do a lot worse. You could definitely do a lot worse. I'd even go so far as to say that's pretty good, and you could feel pretty decent about yourself if you do that. All right, so that is Anthony Walker Jr. Would like to bring him in as a backup or maybe a very low-level, cheap starter. Last guy we're going to do here is Mack Wilson. Relatively young, just turned 26 a handful of days ago. Valentine's Day, baby. Been a member of the Patriots. Before then, he was a member of the Browns. Never really been a full-time starter, but he has started some games. He started a lot as a rookie, actually, way back in 2019. And he's been kind of the definition of just a backup who gets pressed into action occasionally for the last several years. And in that role, he has done fairly well. Last year, he actually had 3.5 sacks, showing a little bit as an edge rusher, playing off the edge a little bit. But he does mostly play inside. You can see how well he was graded in 2023. Now, previous years, not so great. But you can also find some really good stuff here if you dig deep enough. 2021 was good. 2020 was awful. 2019 was awful. So there's reason to believe both ways here. But I do think that Mack Wilson, you could probably get him for very cheap. I know he just had a few sacks, so maybe it would be more like 2.5 or $3 million for 1 year. But he would probably be worth that if he's able to play at the level that he played at last year. He's only 26, by the way. Age is not going to be a big thing yet. Now, there are other guys, and I could probably make a couple more videos about these guys if I really felt like it. Guys like Jalen Reeves-Maybin might bear some discussion. Kamir Grugier-Hill could bear some discussion. But I'm going to go ahead and end it there and say we did enough. Those are the guys who stand out to me as like upside or reliability. There's something there that I think is worth the squeeze. There are definitely other guys you could go get that would be okay, but I'm a little less optimistic about them being what we need or exceeding what we need. So those are my depth guys. Let me know what you guys think about this crew. I know there might not be a ton to say, but some of these guys are notable. Zach Cunningham was considered to be one of the best linebackers in the league not that long ago. Same with Shaq Leonard. Quan Alexander has been a guy that everyone's just waiting to stay healthy for a long time, and he can't do it. So there's stuff here. There is definitely stuff here that we as Seahawks fans should be poking around in. All right. See you guys later. Go Hawks. And tomorrow we move on to another position, and things are going to get spicy, I think, with tomorrow's position.